Hey guys, this is John, and welcome to another Climbing the Rating Ladder video. I'm playing Lolo Shaka, and then a bunch of numbers. They open with E4. What do I feel like playing today? Let's play E4, E5, see where this goes. Yeah, I'm tempted to play a Scandi, but I've been playing a lot of that and talking about that a lot recently. So let's just stick with something that many of you probably play. Okay, we're going to get a Scotch. Now, when white plays D4, you almost always want to capture this pawn at least once. So knight takes d4, I would not have taken again because then white's queen can be hard to push around. We've had games on this channel with colors reversed featuring that. Okay, bishop c4. So white is playing this like a gambit. Now in this position, bishop c5 and knight f6 are the two main moves. I've typically played bishop c5, so I'm probably going to go with that one. Knight f6, e5, d5 is interesting. But yeah, let's go ahead and play the bishop out instead, see where it goes. Okay, c3. And at this point, I can try to transpose into a mainline Italian game. Gioco piano, that is, I should say, because knight f6, take on d4, I throw in this check on b4. And very important on knight f6 that after e5, you play this d5 move. Okay? A crucial step. So let's play knight f6 and see how white responds. Okay, white's continuing to play in gambit fashion, castles. Now, I'm getting a little out of book at this point. I think knight takes e4 is the move. Been years since I looked at this stuff, which is always fun, right? But yeah, I believe this is justified to play. And then on rook e1, you're playing this stabilizing move d5. Same thing if white takes on d4, I believe. I believe I'm supposed to play d5 even there. And then d takes c5, d takes c4, if I recall correctly. But just spending a moment refreshing my memory there because there may not be a good way back if I do decide to play that. Yeah, I think that is correct, because otherwise, if I were to take here, e5, generally I'm not looking to capture on c3 once white is castled in particular, and my king is still in the center. If I castle, then e5 and takes is more unpleasant. So I think almost by process of elimination, this is the move. And let's see what white plays here. White seems pretty confident in the theory. But key moment, because for the moment, I'm up 2 pawns. So will they take, or will they play something else? Okay, rook e1, and here is the moment where I think d5 is just going to be the move. Stabilize the knight, because you hate to play queen e7, for instance, stepping into a pin. You also hate to play f5. So d5 is your saving grace oftentimes in these positions, stabilizing the knight, and also in this case, attacking the bishop. Okay, hope you all have been doing well. I'm recording this video several days in advance of posting it. I'm playing this tournament in Charlotte, which by the time this video is posted, I will be done with. So I'll probably have posted the results in the comments section if you want to check it out. But yeah, I've been very excited because I haven't played an OTB event aside from one Blitz tournament since 2019, actually. So pre-pandemic, and this is a more substantial event over a long weekend. So I've been looking forward to it. Okay, takes. So here, I think I want to drop my bishop back in this case. So I'm still up a pawn, important to note. If I take here, white can take the knight with check. I mean, I could pull the bishop back there, but d5. I like keeping this pawn firmly on this square, guarding the knight and attacking the bishop. If I can maintain that extra pawn, I'm very happy. So yeah, I think bishop e7 is going to be my move. Could maybe play bishop b6, but yeah. Also, there's this move to consider too, I suppose I should mention. But I do like breaking this pin. I think it fits the bill because also if queen takes, there's no knight c3. And my knight would be able to capture on c3. There's no pin down the e-file. So when this situation occurs, I feel like white usually understands that they may not have compensation for their pawn. So bishop d3 attacking e4. I almost said bishop f5 because I'm looking at this f5 square. So in my head, I'm thinking about doing one of these moves. I'm actually slightly leaning towards pawn f5. Nice way to prop up the knight. Similar to some Petrov variations. This can be a good move. So let's just think for another moment about this. Maybe knight c3, castles, queen b3 could be the answer, though. I could also simply pull this knight back and then look to castle on the next move. I think that's pretty reasonable. Bishop f5. Also hard to argue with that. There is this queen b3 move. Anytime I look at bishop f5 early, I'm always taking a look at that. Yeah, probably this is the safest move. Looking one more moment at f5. f5, knight c3, castles, queen b3, though. I could take on c3, but the file might be a little annoying at that point to kind of keep together. Maybe I could play bishop e6 and give this up. But, you know, all this looks kind of like unnecessary calculations because this move looks pretty secure. And I shouldn't experience any issues in castling next move. Even if white were to hop on the e file and I castle, the knight is backing up the bishop. So there's no problem here. Knight d6, also an option if I wanted to retreat, but it did leave this pawn unguarded, so I like the redundancy kind of built in here. We like it when pieces are protecting other pieces in pawns, pawns are protecting pawns, or pawns are protecting pieces, and it's not just one defender. In some cases, it can be many defenders. It can be multiple defenders. All right, so big time deficit, but I feel like the opening battle was pretty conclusively won, unless white really pulls a rabbit out of a hat here. We're going to have to convert. White can try to develop aggressively, you know, maybe bishop g5, knight e5 at some point. Yep, right on cue, bishop g5 played. Guess this move does kind of invite me to capture. You know, h7 I have to watch. So if queen c2 or something, I guess I might have knight b4, but remaining vigilant here. Thinking bishop g4 at this point. I like that. Because then I can attack d4 pretty nicely. Just a smooth developing move. Don't see any issues with d5 or h7. Kind of looking at these pawns. Looking at the pressure here. Can white insert a bishop takes f6 type move somewhere? But this pin is annoying for sure. If the queen leaves the file, or the diagonal rather, guarding the knight like queen b3, I can take on f3 and then take d4. And I'm kind of threatening to take on f3 as it is, because if queen takes, then we capture. Okay, this is a 10-minute game, by the way, no increment. Generally, I prefer to play 10 plus 5. I'm in a little bit of a time crunch before I leave for my tournament tomorrow, so thought I'd speed it up a little bit today. You guys like to see that too, right? All right, and now maybe I can think about this knight e4 move again. Knight e4, and if bishop takes e7, take with the knight in this case. Looks kind of nice. Yeah, I like this move. Kind of a simplifying operation too. Let's do it. Yep, takes. There's also this move, but then I'd have to calculate this whole sequence. What would happen there? So in the interest of saving time, I just want to take this way. Keep things nice and simple. Okay, knight e5. Could trade down both sets of minor pieces here if I want. Maybe start with knight takes c3. Keeps it a little more forcing. Although I wouldn't hate the knight capturing in reply. But now let's keep it kind of forcing. White gets to slightly repair their structure, but I actually don't mind that because I think that pawn on c3 will be kind of weak too in a lot of cases. So let's do that. Let's take here. Expect queen takes. And then I'm thinking c6 at that point. Nice way to solidify the structure. Don't see any discoveries white would have with this knight that would be concerning. Like knight takes f7, I can take with the rook. Knight takes c6, I take with the knight. I actually take with the rook, interesting. Don't really see why you would take with the rook per se, unless you want to swing it over here maybe. I think I'd still play c6 in this position. Yeah, still looks like a good idea. Let's do it. I mean, for the moment, white's pieces are marginally more active, like this knight on e5 and the rook and the queen being out. But it seems hard to create something here for white, so I'm not hugely worried. But we're maintaining vigilance, respect for white's resources, all that good stuff. Okay. Be queen d6 now. I think white's going to double on the e-file. I get the distinct sense that white's going to play that way. Could play pawn f6 if I really want to kick that knight away. That actually might be a decent idea. f6. Obligatory apologies to Ben Feingold, as always. Knight f3, knight c8, trying to go to d6. Could be a little annoying to coordinate and prevent the rook from coming in. That's the only thing. What if I play this knight maneuver right away? That might be the best thing, because I really think my knight belongs on the d6 square. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for this. Still scanning for tactics, but despite all my pieces being on the back rank right now, the most important thing is that the position is solid and the knight is coming here next. Beautiful square. Just controlling tons of territory. Yeah, white has the rooks doubled, but where are they going to go with the knight in front? And if the knight moves, like I might get my knight in here. And really, I just got to try to deal with the rook coming into e7. I could try to neutralize it with rook e8. I think this should be okay. Yep, knight comes back. I think that's a pretty clear sign white wants to come in with the rook. So knight e4. Knight e4, knight d2, f5, f3. Not sure I really want that, at least not yet. So maybe queen f6, rook e7, and one of the rooks to e8 would be a good option here. Yeah, I think I like that. Keep the queen kind of close to the king side as well. So let's go here. Knight guards b7 in a lot of cases, so I feel like right now I don't have to keep a real close eye on the queen side with this knight here. Similar to some QGD structures where that occurs too. Okay, h4, I think white's trying for knight g5 with this move. Decent little try. All right, so I can play h6 myself. I think I'm going to do that. Keep the knight out for now. Again, maybe knight e4 was worth considering there. But just trying to play some improving moves. Probably a rook coming to e8 soon. As long as those endgames look okay for me if we trade down both sets of rooks. I could see white maybe getting really aggressive here with g4. Seems almost like an overpress, but it's an understandable move. Rook e5, okay, interesting. Not sure what the follow-up is, but makes some sense. Yeah, I think bring a rook over. Rook over to e8. I could see white putting a rook, or a queen rather, on the e-file, trying to triple up. Here or here. Takes, though. All right, happy to take. And we're getting this endgame. Queen and knight versus queen and knight, but extra pawn for black. Now g4. Okay, kind of feels like too little too late, though. Like white is not attacking with many resources here. So could bring the knight up. I think I'm going to do that. g5, maybe queen f4. Start to work my way in the position. A queen trade in an endgame might be fatal, especially if I can get at that c3 pawn quickly. So look for this to be a target. Also this pawn in many endgames. Knight e5. Yep. Okay, I'm thinking queen f4. This just looks like a pretty annoying move for white. The queen and the knight are a notorious attacking combo. So whoever can coordinate their queen or knight quicker here should have a big advantage in this endgame. And that's aside from even the extra pawn for me. So just in general. I kind of feel like I might be getting the better of it with this, and white has to watch this pawn at all times. I'm actually threatening f6 now. Kick the knight away from guarding this. So I could see white trying to bail with like queen e3, queen f3, queen g3, something along these lines, looking for a queen swap. But I think in all those cases, okay, f3, but that allows a check here. At minimum, I can pick this up. There's also a check down here if I want to go after this pawn. I think I like flushing the king out, though, too. So, yeah, let's go for this check. I have a minute left. Yeah, probably best to just pick this up. Notice how my knight is guarding these important squares, like there's no queen f5 for white. So despite white's queen kind of looking into, peering into some of the positions on squares on the king side, there's nothing really for white to do. Thanks to this octopus knight on d6. But hey, there's only a minute left. And having blundered my queen in one move in a winning position recently in one of my recent videos, I am not relaxing here. Yeah, so same policy. Queen trade would be great. I'd really like that. Kind of tough for white to make a move here without weakening something. What will my next move be? I'm always thinking about that when my opponent's thinking, and especially if I have control. Like, what will I do if I get another move? Maybe f6. It does allow the queen in here. So there's some potential issues, but I wouldn't necessarily have to even take. I might try queen a1. I think that's a pretty decent move too. Queen c1 even, just trying to get over here. I can't currently give a good check on the second rank. Moving the knight in would lose a pawn, so... All right, they go there. I feel like this would be a good reply now. Would make sense. Knight c4 also. This might be a good time for it. How about the f6 move, actually? I'm going to go f6. I have 34 seconds left, so let's not to get too fancy. Knight comes in. Okay, now I'm going to try to go on the attack. Queen f5 loses instantly to knight e3. That would be a supernatural move for white. Not like in the supernatural, extraordinary sense, but an understandable move, queen f5, because it's just forward, aggressive. Knight e7, I can take the knight, by the way. I think you kind of got to try your luck with this move here, but it's not looking pretty for them. Almost feels like force mate. Bails with the king. Okay. Let's give it check. Check again. Queen, king up. Okay. Oh, that would be a way to blunder your queen, John. Ay, ay, ay. Almost blundered that. Yeah, see, this is where I'm starting to experience problems. Check. Okay, my opponent should have played knight h8. If they had gone knight h8, now I'm checkmating. Next move. Knight h8 with a few seconds left. I was cutting that close, folks. Yeah, that's mate. Oh, I don't know. I might have lost after knight h8 because I was going to try my luck with the king coming forward. And it's close to mate. What did I say? I said blunder the queen. I almost blundered the queen with queen h2. They gave me a thumbs up in the chat. That's nice of them. Put close one. Yeah. I got pretty low there. The 10-0 games are tricky. They really are. But I'm going to keep playing them sometimes. I don't know. Let's see. Where is the win in this position? It's not easy to attack their king. That's the issue here. So even this doesn't really have a threat. So I'm not threatening the knight. So I'll be interested to analyze that. I mean, this does feel like a technical win, especially after I pick off that h-pawn. But white played good defense here. I mean, I couldn't come up with a knockout. Even king h3, I was kind of surprised by that move. It gives me a choice of checks, but I didn't really come up with anything good. Maybe knight e3 should have been preferred. That's maybe what I should have done instead. I gave a couple checks that didn't actually do much. Even check here, king back. So I think in hindsight, yeah, probably king h3. I should have... maybe knight d2 also makes sense. Trying to cut off the queen, but then there's queen f5. This also is not all that clear. Check, king here. If I check here, my coordination is starting to go down the drain. And white is ready with checks around my king. So probably I need a little more time there to fully consolidate and win the game. So yeah, opening I think definitely went well for me. This is the Scotch Gambit. It's interesting to watch this, the name of this change. This offers a transposition into a main line of the Joko piano with here, and I've had lots of videos where bishop d2 or knight c3 are played, almost all of them from the white side. I do like this line, and I recommend it oftentimes for players with the white pieces. But yeah, I think here, I think you have to try c takes d4. And, or sorry, back here, I mean, c takes d4 here, d5, d takes c5, d takes c4, and I believe this position has some theory, with black looking to go queen d3 in some cases, like if here, queen d3, guarding the knight and offering a queen trade. So we'll take a look there as far as the theory, because I think once we get here, pretty clearly white doesn't quite have the compensation that they would like for the pawn. Maybe I had a better way to try to neutralize the initiative, but I think especially for white's rating, they played very well. I mean, f3, probably a mistake. That was a tough position, though, because white's position was starting to come loose. And again, good defense down the stretch. I think white just got a little excited thinking they were going to flag me. But g5, fortunately for me, is mate on the next move. So my opponent just happened to play one of the worst moves on the board with knight h4, moving the knight, but not with check. So yeah, I think from white's point of view, good play, middle game, even the end game, like good resistance, and kept the pressure on the clock, especially 1300s. That's excellent. And I think just maybe having a little more knowledge of that opening. Like the gambits, these can work a lot of times, especially if your opponents are just chopping pawns. I'm sure my opponent has played this line a lot. Many of you who play this will be familiar with this. So that's what can occur if you take. You run into the capture on f7 check. There's some theory even in these positions, by the way. So this can occur. That's kind of what white is hoping for. But yeah, you kind of have to know if black declines the pawn, what to do. Also, you got to know knight f6 here, which has its own theory. e5, d5. And it's kind of a weird looking situation like this. There's also bishop b5 if white wants to just try to regain the pawn like this. Also played frequently. And there's castles. You can do this. There's a cool line, knight takes e4, rook e1, d5. And maybe you can find the next move for white. It's an attractive little move, along with the second move in the sequence. So many of you will know this, but if you want to pause your video, what should white do here if this position comes about in the opening? Okay, the answer is bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, and then the gorgeous knight c3. Using both of the pins, knight takes c3 is illegal since the king is on the file, and pawn takes c3 loses the queen. So black usually flees with their queen, queen a5 or queen h5, I believe. I think you can play queen d8 too, kind of like a Scandi style choice. And there's some theory like this. White tries to temporarily stop black from castling. Some funny stuff happens in this line. I remember, like if h6, white goes here because the bishop can't be captured. I think ultimately the evaluation of this line is pretty much equal, though. So, like a lot of theory, it resolves to equality sooner or later. But those are all lines I'd want to know for both players in playing this entire opening. Okay, let's click into the game review. All right, 79.1 for my opponent, 90.6 for me. Yeah, so nice little trend with the graph, but boy, it didn't feel that way towards the end. Looks like, I guess we're going to get there, but it was minus 3.79 to mate in 2, but the time probably puts that in white's favor as long as they dodge mate. I would have had less than 10 seconds to win that. Okay, so Scotch game here. Yeah, if you're black in these positions, you almost always want to take the pawn on d4. It's kind of like a Sicilian in that sense. In a Sicilian, when you have that pawn on c5 and white plays d4, you almost always take once. Taking twice, if white were to play knight takes d4, that is a mistake because it's hard to get the queen out of the center without weakening your position. Viewers of my video will know that this is just a bad idea for black, creating this weak structure. Other videos I've made in this Climbing the Rating Ladder series have addressed that. So black here usually plays bishop c5 or knight f6 if this occurs. There's some other moves too, like bishop b4 check is sometimes played. But bishop c5 and knight f6 are the main moves. We won't go into that theory. White plays bishop c4 though. And let's just look in the opening book. I think knight f6 is the most popular move here. Yeah, both these moves get played a fair amount of times. Bishop e7 even played a little bit. But yeah, I don't have a huge preference between these two. Again, I was showing some of the theory here. White can go e5. And you kind of got to know that castles is the way to play at that point. Yeah, sorry, I hate that it does that. When you click on the opening book, it takes you there instead of putting it in the notation of the game. That would be much more convenient. Chess.com. So yeah, that would be a line that you'd want to know within knight f6. So here and here. e5 castles. Knight g5, by the way, I think is neutralized by this move. You defend f7 and hit the bishop. So fully playable move there. I preferred the bishop c5 approach though. And then c3. Let's see what the breakdown is here too. Yeah, white also castles a lot of times. Castles, yep, knight f6, e5, and d5 is going to be the next move. Let me move my camera so you can see. If you take one thing away from the opening in general in a line like this, is that e5 should be met by d5. If you don't play d5 in these types of positions, you can get a bad setup because the knight is going to have to kind of go walkabout. So this is such a common counterattack out of e4, e5 in general. And you got to know that as black. And it looks wild. Like you should have some familiarity with this, or at least know that this is playable. Like, yeah, it looks kind of crazy, but black usually ends up castling this way. And these pawns are formidable. But sharp stuff here. Easy to lose your way if you're unprepared. That's the thing about e4, e5 in general, by the way. Like e4, e5, probably this is the strongest theoretical response to e4 that's been borne out, going all the way back to AlphaZero and some of those papers that were published at the time when it was playing itself. And my recollection of its conclusion from playing itself is that it kind of stopped playing e4 after a certain point because it couldn't find an advantage against e5. And if you look at the top level, the games in the recent World Championship, many recent World Championships actually, that really bears that out. It's hard for white to prove a theoretical advantage in the double king pawn openings, but especially at amateur level, you got to be ready for all sorts of gambits. The Scotch Gambit, these various gambits in the Italian game, Danish Gambit. From the black side, for white even, there's like Stafford Gambit, Evans Gambit, all sorts of stuff that you do have to be ready for, I'd say, especially from the black side. So there is a level of practical knowledge, like there's a hurdle in terms of the practical knowledge that you have to have, especially past a certain rating where people will be booked up. So if you continue playing e4, e5, you got to know some of these gambits. Okay, so back to the game. Knight takes e4 was played instead of e5, or c takes d4. Again, c takes d4, I would have checked. And then if knight c3 take here, bishop d2, you can take on e4 or trade. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But castles, knight takes e4, and this is where I think c takes d4. Yeah, you can see that on the percentages. That is just the most popular move. And guess what? d5 is the main move in reply again. And I mentioned this variation. Take, queen e2, yep, queen d3. This is about where my theoretical knowledge ends in this line. Throw the engine on that real quick. It says equal. Here, f5, interesting. Yeah, prop up the knight. And black can look forward to castling. I think white can generally win the pawn back at this point because white is currently down a pawn. But white's not getting anything beyond that pawn. Yeah, Black might even be a little bit for choice here from the looks of it. So that's what can occur after this. So the d5 move. If you're an e4, e5 player as black and you hadn't seen that before, I hope that's a big takeaway for you in the theory of these openings. All right, so rook e1, d5, take on d4. And yes, I did withdraw the bishop to e7. Bishop b4 also looking good. This just looked a little more clear. So I played it. Went back to f6. Yeah, interesting. It does say f5 is good. So I was a little fearful of this move here. And if castles queen b3, which does appear to be fine for white, but it says I can play bishop e6 first. Interesting. I suppose that's so on queen b3 I can go knight a5. No, rook b8. Huh. So put the bishop here first to guard this square. So as opposed to that other line I just showed, I wouldn't have as many issues on d5 guarding it. Because now if bishop e6, yeah, the bishop is undefended. Take here. But if you play bishop e6 first, queen here, what is the difference actually? Oh, because the bishop won't be captured with check. Is that right? Yeah, so if take here, I can take. White picks up the bishop, but if I was castled, that would come with check. Here, I can take. Still looks a little scary for black, but black is up a piece at this point. That's subtle. That's subtle. Maybe worth remembering, though. So, okay, I went back here, but interestingly now, it only says white is very slightly worse. So that might have been, at least in the engine's eyes, an inaccuracy. Yeah, wants white to play some kind of prophylactic moves. h3, that would make it hard for me to bring my bishop out. That is understandable. Okay, this seemed fairly normal. I was starting to feel good again here. Knight e4. Yep, take. I'm not taking with the queen because that would lose d5. So just making some trades. Traded some stuff off here. It's actually suggesting maybe take. And rook takes, or let's say here, pull this knight back. So actually play with both knights on board. Okay. Maybe because since my knight was good on d6, although I had to maneuver it, the remaining knight, the engine's in effect saying, hey, you could do that right away, John. And even with extra pair of knights on board, you're up a pawn. Most importantly, you're coordinating easier. So, yeah, maybe I was in a little bit of a hurry to simplify. Rook takes e2 surprised me. It actually worked out pretty well. I would have thought queen takes, but white made an interesting call here. Looking to move the queen elsewhere, not on the e file, and only then double up. Thought this was a nice maneuver. I really like this. Yeah, this felt aggressive, but if white comes in to e7, I think it's too easy for me to neutralize. I can play a rook to e8, one of the rooks. Even coming here doesn't really help, because this knight's defended. Oh yeah, and that actually runs into this nice double attack. So that's winning. But like I said, I thought my opponent did a great job of keeping it complicated here. h6, maybe unnecessary. Engine's indicating this right away. I was trying to rule out this. How does it want to deal with it? Queen g6 or g6, okay. Yeah, that's fine. But I stopped the knight from coming here entirely. Yeah, and this trade also was fine by me. I thought I was going to win pretty easily at this point, folks, especially when my queen got into f4. I could just sense the position was coming apart for white. But again, good defense by my opponent, and that's the effect of the clock. Even with this f3 move, which is the second best move in the position, by the way. Even picking up this pawn, probably because the pawn's kind of on the side and white can shore things up with king g2, I'm still not quite coordinating around the white king. Suggesting f6 here. Queen g5, okay, just trying to attack the knight a little bit. I mean, I don't feel like this was bad for me per se. Knight c4, yep. We're still at -2, 2.5. King h3, best move. Yeah, it was a great move by my opponent. It's hard to describe like why this is good. It just dodges the threat of knight e3. And it gives me all these choices, which is not easy with 29 seconds left. But none of these choices look decisive. Like, what if I play this? Yeah, then queen f5. And white's king seems open to the elements, but in fact, the engine is saying I should retreat here, guard my own king, stop a check. So I don't know. What would you guys have done in this position? I guess this is what it's saying, check. But why can't white go here? Now knight e3. Huh. Knight e3 at this point. Which I guess was an option here too. Did I mention that? I can't remember. Or it's, yeah, I said knight d2, but what if knight e3 here? Queen h2, wow. Coming in this direction. And if check, just here, no, here. See what I mean? Queen and knight, tricky combo. But white's knight on g6 is causing me some issues with my own king. And it's also stopping my g-pawn coming forward in many cases. Yeah, this is tough to figure out the right sequence here. So if we take this one, knight e3, attacking the queen. Also stopping queen f5, so that makes sense. What if something like this? Probably I win with queen g1, maybe. This even more clear. Because if here, check on g2. King f7. Huh. Take. And then what if here, king e6. And that's mate in 2. Wow. Coming up to guard the f5 square so that I can set up this knight g2 mate. Also, this is a threat. Wow. Miraculously, this is mate on the next move no matter what. With white to move. White even having a check. As I can take with the knight. And that's checkmate. Interesting. Yeah. I guess I don't feel so bad about feeling confused as to where the win was with limited time, because it's tricky and I might need the king. I might need the king for the coup de grace in a lot of these lines. So back to the game. Queen h1, king here. I gave another check. Would have been interesting had white just gone back. So I think my opponent tried to go forward a little bit too much and play off the time. It nearly worked, but a lot of times repeating at least once in a situation like this is especially annoying for the opponent, because when I'm repeating, especially with my king in a couple more moves, I'm kind of indicating I don't see a win right away, because I wouldn't be repeating just to gain time. There's no increment and I'm way down on the clock. So if you're in that situation as the side way up the time but in a worse position, think about repeating once. And just put the onus on your opponent to actually play a good move. Unless you see something really good for them, decisive, and you don't want to give them a chance to see it again. But trust me, it can be a good strategy. Yeah, it's king f4. So this is where I played king f7. Other good moves are h5, knight d6. I mean, those are tough moves. h5, yeah, that's a pretty abstract move. I guess if takes, there's queen g5 there. Knight d6 is a retreating move. That's tough. Okay, so let's see this. So check. Yeah, and this is what happened. So we repeated once. So let's see. Here's where white went knight h4 and lost the game. Check. Even the engine doesn't know what to do. I think it just wants to come back because it wants me to play a different move at this point, but it still says king f7. Just engine things. Can I go here or here? Let's say I go, well, king e6, queen f5. Let's say I go king e7. Queen e2. King d7. Okay, this is winning. But yeah, it involves scary looking moves. Knight d6. Knight d6 allowing queen e7. Guys, this is really tough stuff. Do you know why this works despite seemingly losing the knight and allowing the check? You can pause your video if you want to figure it out. So check, king c8. If white takes, they get skewered. They lose their queen. Again, I'm never seeing that in time pressure. Wouldn't even contemplate a line like that where the queen has a chance to come into e7. High degree of difficulty. I'm kind of thinking in this position I should go for a different approach in theory, because the king, like, having to bounce around. I mean, king f8, does that change anything? If I come here, it's still this check. In this case, I don't even have the knight back here. Yeah, you know, I'm thinking something like h5 is needed at this point. I could also try to check them back and then do something different here, like h5 again. But suffice it to say, this is not easy, and it probably merits further analysis to find a true winning line. I'm just surprised that there's no knockout +5, +6 engine line that's being shown here. Up 2 pawns with the queen and the knight on the attack. But I'd be very curious. Like, let me know, analysis gang, if you've watched this far. First of all, congratulations to you. A lot of people turn it off after the game is done. But this is where the gold nuggets are really found and where we can understand our thought process better and improve it. Yeah, so overall, time was an issue for me. And I think, in hindsight, I probably would have done something different around here. It's tough, though, because queen h1 is still given as a fine move. Yeah, I just don't think, realistically, I'm going to find h5, even with a little more time. King f7 looks so natural, but you can see the engine's just offering to repeat here and then play h5. So this is a somewhat throwaway move as a suggestion. Maybe knight e3 is the way to go. Then queen e2. Also unclear. Really not sure. Yeah, I'd be curious. Be curious what you guys think. Like, I don't doubt this is winning, so I'm trying to make a distinction between theory and practice here, folks. Trying to find like the most practical way to play it. So king h3 is such a good move. It avoids a trade of queens. Because if I could trade queens here, you know, I can win an endgame like that even with very little time on my clock. But it's hard to force a trade now because white's ready to go queen f5 if I don't play a check with the trade. So ultimately, I think that h5 move probably is the thing. Start chipping away at their structure. This is again, if take, this is mate. But a vexing position. Quite a vexing position. So yeah, I feel for my opponent. They walked into a checkmate here at the end, trying for the win, but kudos to Loloshka for the well-played game here. And hopefully you guys picked up a thing or two, especially with the opening, you know, the importance of meeting e5 with d5, some of the theory, and some practical considerations too. And I'm surprised with queen knight coordinated against a weak king and up 2 pawns that there wasn't a win. But in truth, my king was also a little weak, and realistically, I need more time on the clock. All right, thanks as always for watching, guys. Really fun video for me. Tough game, and hope you all been doing well. Thank you, Analysis Gang, in particular, and thanks everyone for watching. Bye, guys.